Welcome to discussion session 3 of the ChangeWorks System Coaching Program. My name is Dave Miller, Director of Partner Expansion at the Institute for Productive Tension. In discussion 3, we're introducing you to a framework for asking your client powerful questions, an ICF core competency. In fact, you'll find several coaching competencies utilized in this part of the system, like developing trust and intimacy with your client, having a coaching presence, active listening, powerful questioning, creating awareness, and developing action plans. This approach will not only help your client discover new insights about themselves, but will help clarify what they really want and move them on a path forward. Now, at this point, you should have completed the discovery session 3 on the path of self-discovery, where T covered these techniques. If you haven't listened to that session yet, go back and do that now before proceeding to this session. The purpose of this discussion session is to take the material T has laid out about the path and talk about how you can apply these principles and tools in your coaching practice. With me to have that conversation are 4 faculty members who have all had extensive experience applying ChangeWorks in their coaching and consulting practices and know a great deal about using this approach with their clients. You'll find out more about each of our faculty members on our faculty page at changeworkssystemcoaching.com. But let me tell you who is with me today and where they're from. So with me today we have Regina Fassold from Orlando, Florida, Tom Rosenak from Chicago, Illinois, Pamela Skyrum from Tampa Bay, Florida, and Dr. T. Waldman Williams from Des Moines, Iowa. Welcome, faculty. How's everybody doing?
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Looking forward to what everyone has to share today. We have a pretty full agenda. And I wanted to begin with a high-level overview of the path of self-discovery, which I sometimes refer to as just the path. And we actually have a CCEU module totally dedicated to the path if you want to go even deeper on how to use this methodology. So for now, let's just get an overview of this tool and this approach and review the steps. And if you remember, the path actually has ancient origins. It was really designed to help kids make good decisions. It's also a questioning technique, as we'll see. It's a technique to make higher quality decisions in much less time. In fact, T has a program called Precision Decisions that uses this technique as well. I've used it a lot to facilitate strategic planning sessions, or really to discuss any issue requiring a course of action. And as you'll see today, not only does this work with individuals, but it'll work with groups as well. So let's look at the path, the steps in the path. And you can see it's represented by these different colors. And we'll start with the blue step. It sits above the other 5. It's blue, and if we look at what's blue in nature, we know the sky is blue, and the sky is over us. And if you're an eagle flying through the sky, you have a perspective. And this is the one step the coach actually holds, in that the coach is facilitating the process with the client and making sure the client walks the path the proper way. So that's the purpose of the blue step. Then we have the white step. The white step relates to snow. It's water in solid form. It's substantial. It asks, what's going on right now? What is the current situation? Okay. Next is the green step. Things in nature that are green are things like plants and things that grow. So you can think of this as that underneath the snow is the potential of what could be. This is where we uncover what the client really wants, the desired situation. Next, we have the black step. Black relates to night. And what's hard to do at night? It's hard to see. So in the black step, the client's identifying obstacles and challenges, both real or imagined. So they're going to have real obstacles in their way that's preventing them from getting from this current situation to this desired situation. They're also going to have obstacles of the mind, or things that they perceive are in the way that may not be real, but they're real to them. In the black step, the coach is asking, what's in the way? And one of the things I've seen is that sometimes coaches will avoid asking questions about this. And I believe this is a mistake because, in my view, this is where most of the tension that can create change lies, in that black step. And it's up to the coach in this step to help the client find the courage to turn the light on and see what's in the way. Okay, then we have the yellow step, relates to the sun, helps us to see, it chases away the darkness. This is all about strategies and solutions. This step helps the client identify an action plan to address each and every obstacles. Because we know if the obstacles are out of the way, the client should be able to easily move to the place they want and to get what they want. And finally, we have the red step. This relates to fire in nature. It's about hunches, passions, instinct, intuition. It asks, what's your gut level reaction to the plan? It helps us identify the level of motivation. And as coaches, if we're not feeling it from the client at this point in the discussion, it means we may have missed something, that we need to go back maybe to identify a better goal or an obstacle that was missed, something like that. So faculty, just anything you want to add just as our high-level overview? Anything I may have missed there? Are we good?
I think you're good.
Okay, thank you. All right, so next, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a brief demonstration of a coach doing a path walk with a client. And in this demonstration, Tom is going to be our coach and Pamela is going to be our client. Now remember, one of the main purposes of the path walk in the ChangeWorks coaching system is to extract an activity list which will form the client's action plan. So during this demonstration, see if you can identify potential activities. The other faculty members are going to be doing the same thing, and we're going to share what we come up with during the debrief. Okay, so Tom, are you and Pamela ready to go?
We're ready. Hello, Pamela.
All right, very good.
Hi, Tom.
Well,
I'm here, Tom.
I'm just so excited to be working with you. And as I mentioned in the last call, that we're going to have this call be brief. And the reason for that is we're going to get the context that we're going to use to make sure that we fly in formation and that the energy that you experienced and were talking about last week is working toward accomplishing what's most important to you. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I've been giving a lot of thought to it.
And so we are going to deep dive on the next call, but today we're just going to set the scene and get the context, and we're going to walk the path of discovery, which I described to you last week. And we're going to start by you describing the current situation. You mentioned one key word, that you're feeling overwhelmed. So I want to know a little bit about the current situation and see if we can identify some things to work on.
Well, okay. So I've given this some thought, and it's so interesting when you begin thinking about something. Sometimes you do even begin to come up with solutions just by thinking about it. But this year is an interesting year for me. I've taken on a lot of work, and it's exciting work. But with all of the responsibilities that I have personally, plus the new work, and now a few of my clients are calling and wanting more things, I just am, as I said, feeling pretty overwhelmed about the whole process, and not so much a lack of confidence. It's just sometimes feeling like I'm not thinking clearly because I have so many things to think about.
So your experience, first of all, congratulations on your success. You're talking about how it's exciting and you're getting, in a sense, what you asked for, which is you asked for more and you're getting more, but it's overwhelming the structures that you currently have in place. Is that accurate?
Oh, yes, it definitely is.
And so that's very emotional because you want to deliver for your clients, and that's how you had the success to begin with. And there's a little bit of concern about the ability to juggle all of that.
Yes, you're right, Tom. I actually wrote down a few things that were important to me, and one of them is making sure that my clients receive the benefits that I've promised them, and to make sure that they get all the hours that I promised them. And so those are two things that are very, very important to me, along with, many other things that are important. That's part of the problem.
And do you think that there might be some things that are less important that are crowding out some of the things that are more important?
Well, I do think that there probably are things in my life that I would call non-essential tasks, that I do because, it seems like it would be a nice thing to do, or somebody's asked me for a favor. Or one of the things I've really been thinking about is, what's most important to me. And in this year, because I now have a very lucrative year in front of me and the opportunity to accomplish some financial goals, I've been asking myself, maybe I shouldn't be so helpful to people, or maybe I should be looking at things that are not as important to me at the moment.
That's really powerful insight, Pamela. So what we're really going to keep an eye on the rest of the call is just to identify what is mission critical, so that when we go through the lens, we'll see things that are mission incidental. And we won't try and prioritize now, but we'll just try and get a sense for what's most important and why. And so the next, you've given us a good outline of the current situation. We're going to go green now, the desired situation. And I'd like to hear you describe the world where you are seizing control, you're focused on what's most important to you, you're serving clients, having fun, and making lots of money. So go ahead and describe what that world looks like in your language.
Well, in my ideal world, first of all, I would get enough sleep. I wouldn't stay up working into the wee hours of the morning. I would make sure that I got enough sleep, and that I had a healthy concern for my energy level. So that I was eating right, getting enough exercise, and getting enough sleep, so that not only do I have the energy, the physical energy, but the mental energy to deliver the things I've promised to my clients.
So harmony and balance are important to you as ingredients of success.
Yes,
Harmony, balance
definitely.
of life, health.
Balancing and having, yes, harmony. I love that word. I was thinking more around balancing work and personal, but I think harmony, that's a great word. I love that word.
Good. We'll keep our eye on things that make you feel aligned.
So that would be the first. Yeah, that would be the first desired, if I were just imagining the best world. And then if I were able to do the first one and have good energy and mental and physical energy and harmony between our balance between taking care of myself and taking care of my clients. The second thing would be to really be at the top of my game. Using, I've been in this business for a long time, so I really like to use all of the resources and experience at my disposal and bring that with me to these clients. That would be a second desired state, that they would be, growing and moving forward and meeting their goals because of our work together. So that would be the second one.
So we're going to make sure you take care of yourself and you serve others to the best of your ability.
Absolutely.
Good. And the third you were starting to say, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I think, we kind of talked about it, which is being clear in my mind what I should be focusing on, so that things that allow me to maintain that harmony are what get the attention, and that I get better at being able to say no to things, or to decide to let somebody else do it, or just not to have it done at all.
So less reactive to the demands out there and more paying attention to what's most important internally and coming from that place.
Oh, that's, yes, very insightful. That's exactly, I wish I'd have used those words.
You
Absolutely.
did. I got it from you, Pamela. It all
Okay.
came from you. I'm just observing what you're saying. So we've got a lot there, and I promise, like I did before, we're on the next session, we're going to deep dive and honor all of that. But for today, I think we have a context of what you desire, and I think it's clear. And I just add to that what I hear, it's a functional word, and you put it qualitatively, but is prioritization will help you. And the more you know what you're saying yes to, the easier it will be to say no to things. And so we're going to work together to get real clear on that. But now we're going to do something often people don't do in a coaching scenario, because everybody thinks let's be positive, and we want to say let's be constructive. Means let's build something out of whatever's going on in your world. But we're going to do some good old negative thinking right now, and I want to hear how you get in your own way, or what's in the way external. So when we talk about barriers, they're internal, they're external, they're emotional, they're real, they're imagined. And we're not going to differentiate, because if you're experiencing it as an obstacle, it's real until you reframe it. And so what keeps you from being, what keeps you not sleeping well, not taking care of yourself, not being clear of your priorities? If you put a not in front of all the things you just said you wanted, let's unpack what gets in your way.
Well, I think you said something about prioritizing and what you say yes and what you say no to. And I say yes to a lot of things. I do say yes to a lot of things. So I'm part of the sandwich generation. I have a 90-year-old mother. I have a daughter with a special needs child who's 9 years old. I have members of my family who ask me to do things for them a lot. And I usually say yes, but just in the last week or so, I've experimented a bit with saying no, and that's been kind of enlightening. So that's an obstacle. I think it's just, I'm an oldest daughter, so I think I should always be there to do everything. So I've been trying to manage that better, but I don't think I'm there yet. I think I really need to be watching myself and not be so quick to say yes, or to offer to do things for people that are not, that they could do for themselves. It wouldn't matter if someone else did them.
So if there was a way to be clear that you are there for your loved ones, but being there doesn't mean saying yes to every request. And that's also true with clients too. We want to serve our clients, but a lot of times they ask for things that won't help them get where they want to go. And we can say yes to all the things, and then we're not where we want to be and they aren't. So I think we need to explore how to say yes and love to your family, but not at the expense of your health, because you won't have anything to give them if you don't keep recharging your battery. So I look forward to that exploration.
Yeah, and that has happened times where I've just been too tired to do anything, so I've had to say no. And it is enlightening when you say no, and it seems to be fine. The person finds it, figures out a way to do it without you. So that's very true. That's that. And no, I have to say, I do find it easier to set those boundaries with my clients than with my family members. So I do have some experience, I think, at setting the boundaries in a kind and effective way. I guess I would say.
So laying all
So
of
that's
these,
an obstacle. I think that when I noticed that it went off, I think I was just going into talking about how I do set some guidelines for myself. And an example I used was I say to myself, do not stay up until 1 o'clock in the morning working on something. You know, go to bed at a reasonable hour and get your rest. And yet then I get engrossed in something and I go ahead and stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning working on it. And then the next day I suffer because didn't have enough sleep. So what I'm really saying is not only have I maybe not set good boundaries with my family members, sometimes I don't stick to my own boundaries for myself.
so putting all of the demands on you in one place and really taking a good look at how they interact with one another and the fact that you have only 168 hours each week. That would be a
Right.
helpful process to go through, wouldn't it?
It would be a very helpful process to go through. Absolutely.
Good. Let's go ahead now and come up with some ideas of things you feel, and you've already identified several of it. So we're going to call this yellow, and yellow is generating some new ideas. We're going to shine the light on things you can do. And the only thing I want to caution you here is when you start coming up with these ideas, you'll experience tension because you'll go, I don't know how I'm going to do all of that. And let that be okay. And again, know that we're going to explore that together on the next session. And it's perfectly normal. It's like when you're brainstorming, you do not need the how to do it yet. We just want to capture, what do you think you need to do to be more powerful in your business and in your life?
Well, one of the first things that popped into my mind while we were talking just a few minutes ago about the obstacles is I think I probably do need to have a really transparent discussion with the family members who make the most demands on me. Good. And maybe this just popped into my mind, maybe find out what's most important to them and what's least important so that we can agree on a few things I would be willing to do. And but say, you know, I think you used the words, I wouldn't be able to respond to all of their requests, but I would get more information about what was really important to them.
Do you see how powerful that is? So you're going to challenge your assumptions. So you're thinking that because you love your family, you want to do what they ask you to do, which is a natural desire, but you might be assuming a lot of things and doing things that aren't important to them. That's really powerful. So having a discussion, learning what their true needs are, and working with them to make sure that you are meeting their needs without bouncing every which way every time they ask. Good.
And then that brings up for me, like my mom, who's 90, she's lonely, but a lot of times when I offer to do something with her, she's too tired. But it just occurred to me that if I could just set up a schedule with her, that I'm going to see you on these days at this time, and maybe you can be thinking if you want to do something or go out somewhere, then that's when I could do it. Because what I've been doing is just trying to react to her and not schedule things. And I think if I did a little better scheduling with her, she would have something to look forward to, and I would have more control over getting, you know, pulled off of something else to respond. So
excellent. Thank you. What about your work? How are you going to balance your work? What are some things you need to do? So prioritize is one that you mentioned before.
Well, that will be easier for me. I just need to use my calendar. I know how many hours I've committed to each client. I know what activities I'm going to be delivering. When I do a contract with somebody, we're pretty clear, very clear. We start with what outcomes do you want, and then I come up with a list of things that we will be doing together to help them reach those outcomes. So I need to, I think instead of scheduling like a month ahead, I need to schedule the whole year. I do. And with the understanding that, you know, things do come up and there may need to be some adjustments, but right now I know exactly how much work I have, and if I got it on the calendar, I mean, more precisely scheduled than I have it now, I think then if something else came along, I could look at my calendar and see if I could do it or not, instead of just thinking, oh, that sounds like fun. I think telling the people, yeah, I'll do it. So yeah, I think scheduling using my calendar, and this is not something I'm kind of a free spirit person. I've never really been very effective at using a calendar, but I think I've got to get more effective.
And what about other administrative functions?
Oh, well, are you talking about, I have this on my list of problems I was writing down, which was bookkeeping and office work. Are we talking about that kind of stuff?
We're talking about anything that can take a lot of time and may not produce the results you want it to produce.
Well,
So
I'll tell you, bringing up the bookkeeping and office work or administrative work, that's a real dilemma for me, because it needs to be done. You don't get paid if you don't invoice. You don't, you got to stay up with your bills. You got to do your taxes. You've got to do all that stuff. And so in the past, I was not doing that much work because I thought I might retire, but I didn't. Now I'm like full steam ahead, and I'm in the middle of it. So finding someone to help me, that seems overwhelming all by itself. So that's an area I feel frustrated with, and
good.
it does
So
take away from the real important parts of my work to have to stop and, oh, I've got to, work on my taxes. Oh, I got to pay my bills. Oh, I might have an accountant, but you still have to get stuff ready. So that's an area.
You go back to that green, and we were celebrating a year that was best in terms of health, prosperity, and family. Tell me why that's important to you.
Okay, I'm
What's
back.
your motto around that?
I'm sorry, Tom. My network setting, it cut out again, even though it shows that I'm connected. It cut out again.
So we're going to move to red, and we're going to really end this path with your passion. And by the way, it came through on every one of the steps of the path. But I just want to hear you say why this is so important to you, and almost a motto around this, so that when we celebrate a year from now your success, we know exactly how you used the energy of your passion, got it flying in formation, and did positive damage in the world. So let's end with you talking a little bit about why this is important to you and why you're so resolved to get these things working together better.
Okay, let me think just 1 second.
Thanks, Tom and Pamela, for that great demonstration of the path. And obviously, I think you can see, students, how in depth you can go, how scalable this is. We did a kind of a shorter session, although you could see where it could go much deeper. And I don't know about you guys, but I got a bunch of activities here that I captured. Before we look at that, let me just ask you, why do you think walking the path is a useful exercise with clients for a coach to do? Observations do you have out there?
This is T. Some of the things I think that it's a useful thing is because it explores everything around the brain on both sides, both the emotional, the logical, the things that you really hadn't thought about, but you're able to verbalize it. So I think going through the path allows that creativity, as well as understanding that there are just, blocks in your mind and allows you to think through how to get through those.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can add something, having just gone through it with Tom. There's something super beneficial about having someone ask you these questions and focus you on just one piece of it at a time. Sometimes when you're trying to think about an issue, your mind wants to think about all parts of it at once, where this allows you to just think about, well, what's going on? What would I like it to be? What's keeping me from doing it? What might I do? And why would I even want to spend the energy? And so I felt really wonderful, heard, and I liked the way that Tom rephrased what I was saying. Even though he said those were your words, it just they weren't my words, it was my meaning, but it was better than what my words were. So that was just a positive experience, and it gave me a lot of hope and anticipation that actually this is very doable.
Great. So Tom used some skills of summarizing and reframing that really helped you in the process. And Pamela, you mentioned that the idea of going through this path and the coach facilitating that, keeping you in color tight compartments,
Right.
really adds
Really
clarity
helpful.
for you. Okay, very good. And again, there's a purpose behind the sequence of these colors too, in terms of how it manages tension along the way as well. Any other thoughts about what makes this exercise or this technique useful? Okay, let's tell you what we'll do now. Let's just kind of gather what people got in terms of activities here. I'm just going to bring up a Word document so we can capture some of this. So what kind of activities did people hear throughout that discussion? Let's just kind of just brainstorm them and just jot a bunch down. They don't have to be well polished at this point because we're going to do that in another step.
Identifying mission critical activities, or actually writing down mission critical activities and then writing down less mission critical activities. Because identifying really isn't it's more of a passive thing than an active. And so I think that's really important, is to make it active so you can see it or hear it.
Okay, so write down mission critical activities, which is kind of what we're doing now too, right? So
I wrote down.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wrote down a couple of activities at the beginning of the session, and I must admit that I was so drawn into this session that I completely forgot about activities.
That's fair.
I was just
coaching,
following the path, and I was just in it. So I stopped really taking notes. But at the beginning, I got a lot of activities, very clear. In the white step, in talking about the current situation, eat right, get enough exercise, get enough sleep, have good mental and physical energy, be at the top of my game, take care of myself, and serve others to the best of my abilities.
Another one I thought is, because if you want to change things, you have to change questions. So asking questions of myself when I feel out of balance, or I don't feel my head, authentic. My head, my heart, and my gut are not aligned. So asking myself questions when that is not aligned.
Okay. Cool.
So that means you have to identify them, write them down, and all of that, but I didn't want to write down again.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to put some prioritize work. this kind of relates, but she said this in a different part. Go to bed at a reasonable hour.
Well, and balancing self,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know the active verb for this, but when there is confluence of self and confluence, harmony of self and harmony of clients.
Mm-hmm.
So it's when do it's I don't want to use the word knowing, but I'm just going to use that right now. Knowing when
Mm-hmm.
I am out of balance with between myself and my clients and my family, because she has a tripod there.
Right. So, okay, with myself,
My clients and my family.
Okay, good.
And then I'll jump in here because one of the things I wrote down for myself was being transparent with my family about my focus. Now, I know that's probably a better way to say that,
Well,
but
that's okay. We're not worried about being perfect right now.
it's all, I guess the action verb would be telling my family
Yeah.
about my focus.
Ooh, yeah.
We'll come back to that. I got maintain, this is kind of related, maintain healthy relational boundaries.
Well, and I think that's good. And I think I'm building on that because if something is measured, it gets done. So
Mm-hmm.
Identifying measures of success in balancing and measure and evaluating evaluating when I'm not meeting those measures of success in that balance.
Mm-hmm.
Because there needs to be, some measurement. Pam already knows the consequences. Well,
Okay, so we got quite a few, and I'm sure there's a ton more. Find out what's most important. Set a schedule with my mom for visits, those kind of things.
Yeah, as T was talking to you, I was thinking, oh, they have the new Fitbits that measure how and things like that. It's so capturing some of those measures could be very useful at keeping
Right.
me on track.
Okay. So let's go ahead and let's use kind of best practices to polish some of these. And again, we could have created a fuller activity list. We probably could have had 50 activities at least. So there's a few principles we want to think about here, right? When we do activities, and I'll just go through some of those. We should have one verb and one object. That's one principle, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've already talked about this, kind of having a powerful verb and a
Right.
clear object. So we could say I want to minimize something, or we could say I want to eliminate something, for example. So the eliminate is even more powerful. So again, all of these, by the way, all of these activities could work just even the way they are, but we can make them better. And that's what we're talking about now. T mentioned making things measurable. So the more metrics we can put in there, even subjective ones, the more effective it could be. Also, focusing on external behavior. So like things like, and we'll come back here, like knowing when I'm out of balance, or being something, being at the top of my game. There's a we want to kind of boil this down to what's the action I need to take, because for things to change, it's going to eventually come down to taking actions. Now there might be lots of work we do, inner work we do with a client to get there, right? But it's going to come down to stuff that they need to do to get the results they want to get. Do you guys agree with
Right.
that?
Yeah.
Okay. And also, let's not clutter our list with mission incidental activities. You know, Tom used the word mission critical. So let's have mission critical activities here.
Well, can I say one thing, Dave?
Yep.
Sometimes, and it depends upon the person, you have to eliminate things, less critical things, so you can really highlight what's critical. Otherwise, if retention, if all that little junk builds up, that becomes almost a crisis then. So,
Sure.
when can you think? So identifying it so she can think of it sometime.
Sure.
Yeah, and this
sense?
is Tom. I also want to say that we sometimes don't know something's mission critical until we explore it. So the beautiful thing about the tool is that you can have something on there that came from her first conversation, and after the second one, come to a conclusion that it isn't as critical. But
Right.
you're probably better to err on the side of including it if it's something she identified. And I would also, I would incorporate tools. I would say something like finding the right tools to support my daily activities. And so getting a Fitbit, so you could do a brainstorm around there. But I think it's like if she's feeling out of control about I haven't used a calendar in a long time and I don't use a Fitbit or whatever comes up, if you were to roll them into a category and saying, creating structures that support my priorities, then you could explore what are some structures available. And it could be apps, and it could be administrative assistance, it could be whatever. So I like to have like a broader thing that gives us room to explore, and
Yeah, and
it'll
actually,
tell us.
and what you're alluding to, Tom, is that you could have almost a separate list that just focuses on creating those structures.
Yeah,
Right.
You could say that's going to
yeah,
be our area of focus now. Like once you go through this and all these, you can drill down. This might be the
yeah.
50,000-foot view, and then we say, okay, now let's really get into the strategies and the activities for each one of these or a group of
And
these.
if she's in high stress on that, a couple of questions might turn out most of the tools she's comfortable in, there's only one that's freaking her out, and that's pulling the whole activity up there. And then you can really go to work on that one thing. But you can't presume to know what that one thing is now. So you
Right.
do know that she's not happy with the structures. They don't allow for the growth she's experiencing. They were good structures for last year. So I like
Yeah.
that activity is to finding structures that support my priorities.
I like that too, as the person who was part of this coaching team. Also, I want to go back to something that T said, which had to do with measurement, because it occurs to me that having some things on here that follow the path on my activity list could be useful. Like if I began to measure exactly how I am spending my time,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe just writing it down, keeping making a sheet, and where in 30-minute increments I write what activities I was engaged in. That I think could be very useful to me in sorting through what I needed to be doing and didn't need to be doing. The things I could eliminate. So I think a section on the measurement's very important.
Right. Okay. So this is all good stuff. And you can see, hopefully, our students are going to see how this just creates a lot of coaching work with the client.
Yeah.
One of the things that, we could spend lots of time, it just uncovers plenty of things that are needed here. Right. So let's talk about just polishing up some of these a little bit. So, do we see anything where we have more than one verb, for example, or more than one object? I mean, I'm looking at this one here in terms of more than one object.
Yeah, you could do a separate one for each.
Yeah. Now, why is that important to maybe separate those?
Well, I think even during my coaching, I said I'm much better at setting good boundaries with my clients than I am with my family. And then later on, I added in the conversation with Tom, I don't even keep my own boundaries with myself.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
I think they're not the same. And so if you lump them together, you don't get an accurate reflection of what's really happening.
Don't lose that, Dave. Put that activity down, keeping my boundaries with myself, because she sets them and doesn't keep them. And that's an activity, keeping my
Yeah.
boundaries.
right.
And that's an
Well,
important one.
So,
Yeah.
and it seems like knowing when I'm out of balance is one thing, but keeping those boundaries. And down below, you have maintain healthy relational boundaries. So, it's keeping the boundaries for myself, for my clients, for my family.
Right.
So it's again not only knowing them, but
Keeping them.
keeping and measuring or
And,
something.
and
And in the case of her
Yeah, but I think
family,
I like the knowing being still
Yeah.
in there, because you've got to know before you can keep.
and I also noticed that with your family, you're just starting to discover your default is saying yes to everything and you don't know them. With
Right.
yourself, you know them and don't keep them. So they are two separate activities. There's a
Yeah, they
knowing
are.
part, and ultimately they'll come together as one. But I would rather have the apparent redundancy, because
There's a
you're
whole
in
lot of
different states.
exploration
Yeah,
that
you're
could
in
be done
different
around the
states of
knowing.
knowing.
Yeah.
Well, but is knowing more of a mental thing? What will really keep it visually, for her?
Well,
Knowing.
that's kind of where I was coming from too. It's like for me to keep them, I obviously have to know them. So
Yeah.
now if the client says, "Hey, I really like that, that that really helps me," I would keep it in.
What about this activity? Identifying
Yeah.
the boundaries with my clients, identifying the boundaries with my family, identifying the boundaries with myself. And then when you've identified them, they're like a list or some sort of compass. And then, of course, you instantly go to managing them, keeping them,
Sure.
holding
Yeah.
them.
Sure, that would work too. Now, I just want to come back to this, why we separated these out, okay? Because, and we kind of said this, we're at a different, Pamela's at a different place with each of these. So when we
Right.
talk about measuring the tension is going to be very different for these. And if we keep them together,
Yes.
we're not going to really
Yeah.
see that. So that's why we
Right.
have separate verbs, separate
Yep.
objects here. Now, we've done a lot of work making things more powerful. I liked what we've been doing already with coming up with some of these other activities. Anything we could do to make things maybe more measurable. Like I'm looking at like some of these up here. Like what's enough
Well, I guess
exercise?
we
What's
could say
enough sleep?
track. Yeah, we could say well, one of the things, once we've decided how much exercise and how much sleep, we have that's a decision that has to be made, but we also then could track it.
Yeah. Track. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Something like
Yeah.
that, right? So we know
Right.
that's something I know if I got there or not, I achieved it or not, right?
Right.
Yeah, I wrote myself a note too about designing some tools I can use,
Get
to do these things. Just, sheets of paper where I keep track of it.
at least 8 hours of sleep, per night. So again, you can
Hmm.
see how that clarifies it even more, right? Like take care of
Right.
myself. Okay,
Eat
there's a
healthy.
lot
Yeah, eat healthy.
there's a lot we could drill down there, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of options there.
Um, be at the top of my game. We use we might want to use a different verb here. We might want to really define what that means. And there might be several activities. This could be a
Right.
separate, this could be a conversation or a list of its own, right?
It could be.
Um, okay, so again, I think people are getting the idea, and you can see again. Let me ask this question: why is this process of activity clarification a useful exercise with clients? What's been your experience?
I'll jump in. So
Sure.
one of the things is it provides some structure to thinking about an issue or a problem that you're trying to deal with. So once you begin to provide some structure to it, it feels more manageable. You feel more in control. And that takes away some of the anxiety that I guess you've talked about the 5 levels. It takes you out of the high stress area once you feel like you have a little bit more control.
Mm-hmm.
This is Tom, and T often says that it's having a conversation with yourself, but the problem with most of the conversations I have with myself is monkey mind takes over and they go all over the map. This allows you to visit one without losing sight of the others, but really diving more purposefully and intently over time. And it's really helpful to a coach because we want to listen to everything our clients say. But if she's out of focus at that moment, we need placeholders. And this
Right.
activity list is a wonderful placeholder. We don't need to call them equal, but they're things that we've identified to keep our eye on. And I find that I don't go over the same ground over and over again. It's different each time you visit it as things change. And after all, this is ChangeWorks.
Right.
But these are the things we're keeping our eye on. I no longer can function without an activity list.
Right.
And I want to, just looking at this, I always try to take the verb. I try not to have an ing on it. So like the next question would be ask myself, and down there where we have knowing and keeping, I would be using know and keep.
Okay.
I don't know if others do that as well, but
I've done either way. I think as long as you're consistent with your list, I'm not sure it matters. But
I would
I,
too.
and I,
preference
and
is-
I like ing because it's a continuous thing rather than an event. It's like an ongoing process, but I wouldn't be a stickler on it. One thing I do think is we need to be consistent so that when we use one way, that we have them all feel consistent. Otherwise it raises the tension.
Yeah, no,
oh, I like that. Yeah, and I hadn't thought about it from the perspective that you just mentioned, Tom. So I can see the value of the ing, but I agree with you. It should be consistent.
And the other thing is I know I like the INGs. However, my client may not like the INGs. So
Yeah.
and I think putting the verb at the very beginning keeps that consistent versus having the object first.
Yep.
And
Good
so
point.
I think that's very important to keep that the verb first and be a client focused, ING or not.
I
excellent.
like that.
Okay, great. Well, great exercise here. I think we have a case study now that we'd like to go into by our coach and faculty member, Regina Fassold. She's got an example, a real life example. By the way, just in case people didn't know, that coaching demonstration was real as well. That was Pamela's real situation that she volunteered to share with us, and they had not rehearsed. Tom and her had not rehearsed that, so that was then a real time coaching you saw there. But Regina, tell us about your situation, and when you're ready, I'll after you get into your story a little more and want to show us some things, I'll flip the screen control over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've just heard Pamela and Tom. It was a beautiful presentation of how to walk the path with an individual coaching client. And as I said earlier, I got so drawn into it that I forgot all about the activity list. What I would like to share with you all is how to use the path of self-discovery with a corporate client. That's the work I do most. I'm an executive coach and work with big global corporations and a lot of times with entire teams. And the case study that I'd like to share with you is about a senior marketing team of one of these big companies. And they were in a situation where they had a huge project, a global project that needed to be done in a very restricted time. The senior team existed of the EVP of marketing and 5 of her direct reports. They had been a team for quite some time, so they have been working together for years. And in normal situations, everyone would have said they are a functioning team. So there weren't any major obstacles or challenges within this team. However, with the new situation, with a new global project, they were put on the spot, and the team and the project were in a high visibility area, and they really had to step up their game. They had to perform like a high performing team. Everybody had to give their best, including the teams that they lead. So altogether, each one of them had teams between 50 and 80 people. So the effect that they had on their teams also had to improve massively. The problem that was given was they're not dysfunctional, but they just have to be much better. They have to be better aligned. They have to communicate better. They have to react to conflict much faster and better. And they have to get the job done in a very short time. So my job was it really to come in and align the team, find what's not working, and help them become this highly functional, high-performing team. And all I used to do that is the path of self-discovery and following the change grid, and no other tool. And of course, coaching processes along the way, but going into a big assignment like this, being able to use the path was really honing into what exactly is happening here. So
you use the path with the team itself.
With the team itself, yes.
Okay, can you describe a little bit of what that was like for us?
Yeah, I can share the process that I used with them. So I started step 1. I had confidential feedback meetings with each individual alone. And I started with the step, tell me all about the current situation, the white step in the path. And all I did is I took notes, I asked more questions, deepened, until I really got a sound understanding of each of these individuals, what's going on. From there, I moved over to the green step, asking, so tell me all about the desired situation. What would you like to see change? And again, collected more information about their desired situation. And in this process, they automatically moved to the black step. And these are obstacles that surfaced. So very simple process, 1 hour with each individual. After that, I went back to my office and processed the feedback. And I processed it in a way that everything that was said was in a bullet point list. And I could identify 10 big buckets, 10 areas where all of what was said would fit under. And after I had the buckets, and each bucket had about 7 to 10 bullet points of their feedback, after that, we met all together. And our next step together as a group was to review together what people identified as the current situation, the desired situation, and the challenges they have, the obstacles they find. So we didn't go all the way through the past. In this first meeting, which was a half-day meeting altogether, we reviewed the buckets that consisted of the white and the green steps. And as a next step, the team created activities. The team created a list of mission critical activities for each of those buckets. And you can imagine we had discussions about each of the buckets, and in these discussions, they already came closer. It wasn't about finding a solution. It wasn't going to the yellow step. That was not the purpose of the meeting. The purpose of the meeting was to really come up with a solid activity list of mission critical activities that everyone in the team could agree upon. And they did agree to altogether 24 what they identified as mission critical activities.
Okay, Regina, why don't you, since we had a little bit of technical difficulty in showing your screen, why don't you just read some of the activities the team came up with as their mission critical activities? Just give us an idea.
So they agreed that, and actually the first activity they came up with, they identified as the most important one. So it became activity number one. That's untypical. We don't add it in a certain order, but they did.
Okay.
And it was knowing with absolute certainty, it's a bit long, that we as a team have each other's back. And it was beautiful, the discussion, to see how they all came to this realization. This is what we need from each other. So it became an activity, mission critical activity. Number two was having open and candid conversations amongst ourselves. Number three was collaborating as a well-functioning leadership team. Communicating open and constructive feedback with each other on a weekly basis. So as you see, the activities are quite long, a little specific. Oftentimes we have a lot shorter activities without so many descriptors, but they came up with it, and this is what resonated with them. They were on the same page when they identified it. So they added specific words like communicating open and constructively on a weekly basis. They identified that they're not speaking to each other for weeks. Then some of the shorter ones were taking calculated risks, being highly effective as a leadership team, executing in a timely manner. Then about their own teams, also communicating one strong vision to our teams, aligning all teams around our vision and goals, motivating our teams to exceed expectations, and executing on company goals in a timely manner. Okay,
great. Those are great examples. And I can imagine, I'm just kind of still thinking about the first one you said and just saying, wow, that one seems like you could just really camp there and have a big discussion. Like, okay, what does it look like when we have each other's backs? Like, what does that look like? And maybe that could be even another activity list if you wanted to go that way. But even just having that there, it's almost like a mission statement for the team. And
absolutely.
And really, as long as they all know what it means, it's going to work, right?
Absolutely. It was great. They came up with it, and they worked on each of these activities until it resonated with them strongly. And everybody knew when we put it in a change grid and they all get the survey to rate their ability and the challenge and the situation that they have with this, that they all knew what this means to each one of them.
Excellent.
So that was our next step. We concluded that meeting after we had created the activity list. And I then generated the change grid, and everybody completed the survey. And our next step was then to come together again in a one-day meeting. And in this meeting, we really looked at the group in its entirety, where everybody stands in regard to the activity, where everybody's tension was. Some people were high up in stress, others were down in apathy, and again, others, a team of 6, were out in the out-grid danger zone, and others were kind of in this zone where, yeah, you just observe, but you're not getting your feet wet.
Mm-hmm.
And it became very clear where everybody needed to move towards, and which maneuvers they had to which steps they had to take to come together.
Okay, great.
I know I'm maybe going a little
Yeah,
too far
you're
ahead
getting
here.
into some advanced stuff, which everyone's going to learn about. So that's good. Good stuff.
So after we talked about the group profile, where everybody was and how they all relate to each other, we really talked about the yellow step. So we had an entire day to come up with the solutions, and the emotions, the red step. And by the end of the day, there was complete clarity. Everybody had a chance to express their feelings towards all these mission critical activities, and they came together as a performing team with an agenda to what they need to do, what they identified themselves, what they needed to do to come together and be the leaders they needed to be for the company, for their teams, and for their own sake.
Yep. Okay.
Sorry, I have to, that's my phone, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, thanks Regina for sharing that. That's really good. Good example. Using what we call group profiles, which aren't part of this program, but that is something you can learn and get certified in here at the Institute for Productive Tension. But it's still good to see how this process does work in a corporate situation with a team. So okay, well, we're gonna sign off. Any other comments from our faculty about what we did today? We talked about the path of self-discovery. We demoed how to use that in a conversation. We and we talked about generating activity lists, and Regina gave us a little case study. So, Tom, do you have anything you want to add?
I just want to say the process works. Trust the process, trust yourself. And I look forward to continuing to go forward with this learning and teaching.
Thank you so much. I agree with everything you said. So that concludes our discussion session today on the path of self-discovery. I want to thank all of our faculty members for their great insights. And your next step in the program is to move on to the application session number 3, where you'll have activities and exercises that will help you integrate these concepts even further. So have fun practicing, and I'll see you on the next discussion call.